Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're diving into the world of international trade and economics. Specifically, we're talking about tariffs. You know, those taxes on imported goods that President Trump loves so much. Now, Trump's been a big fan of tariffs since he took office, but in 2025, he's cranked things up a notch with a whole new set of policies. These policies are sending shockwaves through the global economy, and today, we're going to break down exactly what they mean for you, your wallet, and the future of American businesses. Buckle up because it's going to be a wild ride. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of Trump's latest moves, let's start with the basics. What exactly are tariffs, and how do they work? In the simplest terms, a tariff is like a tax that a government imposes on goods coming in from other countries. So let's say you're a company in the US, and you want to import some fancy Italian shoes. With a tariff in place, you'll have to pay an extra fee on top of the price of those shoes to bring them into the country. The idea behind tariffs is to make imported goods more expensive, which then encourages people to buy American-made products instead. Now, while that might sound good in theory, protecting American jobs and all, in reality, it's not always so simple. See, when those Italian shoes become more expensive, guess who ends up footing the bill? That's right, you, the consumer. Tariffs often lead to higher prices on everyday goods, from clothes and electronics to cars and groceries, and that, my friends, is where things start to get a little complicated. So, what's different about Trump's 2025 tariff policies? Well, one of the key changes is his focus on what he calls reciprocal tariffs. This basically means that if another country slaps a tariff on goods coming from the US, Trump is ready to hit back with an equal tariff on their goods coming into the US. Now, this might sound fair on the surface, an eye for an eye, right? But it has the potential to spiral out of control pretty quickly. One of the biggest examples of this is Trump's new stance on value-added taxes, or VAT. VAT is a type of consumption tax that's common in many countries, especially in Europe. Trump's arguing that VAT is basically the same thing as a tariff, and is threatening to impose retaliatory tariffs on countries that have a VAT. This has caused a lot of tension with some of America's closest trading partners, like those in the European Union. Okay, so we've got tariffs increasing the cost of imported goods, and we've got the potential for a global trade war brewing. What does all of this mean for inflation? Well, you don't need to be an economist to see that when prices go up on imported goods, it can put upward pressure on prices across the board. Think about it. If a company has to pay more for the materials they import to make their products, they're likely going to pass those costs along to consumers in the form of higher prices. And that's exactly what many experts are worried about. They're predicting that Trump's 2025 tariff policies could lead to a significant jump in inflation, which is already a concern for the US economy. Now, inflation itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. A little bit of inflation is normal and can even be a sign of a healthy economy. But if it gets out of control, it can erode purchasing power and lead to economic instability. Section 5. The Fed's Balancing Act, Navigating Inflation and Growth. This brings us to the Federal Reserve, or the Fed, which is like the central bank of the United States. One of the Fed's main jobs is to keep inflation in check while also promoting economic growth. They do this primarily by adjusting interest rates. When inflation is high, the Fed typically raises interest rates to cool down the economy and slow down spending. But when the economy is sluggish, they might lower interest rates to encourage borrowing and investment. Now the Fed is facing a tricky situation with these new tariffs. On the one hand, they're seeing inflation creeping up, and they know they need to keep it under control. On the other hand, they don't want to stifle economic growth, especially if a trade war starts to hurt businesses and consumers. It's a delicate balancing act, and the Fed's decisions in the coming months will have a major impact on the US economy. Section 6. Industry impacts winners and losers in the tariff war. So far, we've been talking about tariffs in a pretty broad sense, but it's important to remember that they don't affect all industries equally. Some industries might actually benefit from tariffs, at least in the short term. For example, let's say you're a steel manufacturer in the US, and Trump slaps a big tariff on imported steel. That means foreign steel becomes more expensive, which could make your American-made steel more competitive. You might sell more steel, hire more workers, and see your profits go up. But here's the catch. Even if you're in an industry that seems like it would benefit from tariffs, there can be downsides. For example, that steel manufacturer might be using imported machinery or raw materials to make their steel. If tariffs make those inputs more expensive, it could offset any gains they get from reduced competition. And then there are the industries that rely heavily on imported goods. Think about retailers who sell a lot of imported clothing or electronics. Those businesses might see their costs skyrocket, and they might have to raise prices, which could hurt sales. Section 7. Echoes of the Past, Lessons from Tariff History. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds familiar. Haven't we been down this road before? And the answer is yes, we absolutely have. Throughout history, there have been countless examples of countries using tariffs to try to protect their own industries or gain an advantage in trade. And you know what? More often than not, it hasn't ended well. One of the most famous examples is the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. This act, signed into law during the Great Depression, raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods. The goal was to protect American jobs and businesses, but it backfired spectacularly. Other countries retaliated with their own tariffs, which brought global trade to a screeching halt. This deepened the Great Depression and had devastating consequences around the world. Section 8. The Global Trade Web. Unraveling the Complexities. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act is a stark reminder that we don't live in a world of isolated economies. We live in a globalized world where countries are interconnected through a complex web of trade relationships. When one country starts pulling on the threads of that web, it can have ripple effects that are felt far and wide. Trump's 2025 tariff policies are already creating uncertainty and tension in the global economy. Countries are scrambling to figure out how to respond, and businesses are left wondering what the future holds. It's a complicated situation with no easy answers, and it highlights the importance of understanding the complexities of international trade. Section 9. Conclusion. A delicate dance with unpredictable steps. So, there you have it. A crash course on Trump's 2025 tariff policies and their potential impact. As you can see, it's a complicated issue with a lot of moving parts. There's no doubt that these policies will have a significant impact on the U.S. economy and the global trade landscape, but the full extent of those impacts remains to be seen. The coming months and years will be crucial in determining whether Trump's tariff tango leads to a trade war, a surge in inflation, or perhaps even a resurgence of American manufacturing. One thing is for sure, it's going to be a wild ride, and we'll be here to break it all down for you every step of the way. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future deep dives into the world of economics and politics. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.